cover every proverb, even when we're done with the material. I am going to change this up a little bit starting next week. I'm going to give you, and they're back there. I'll put them on the table as you're leaving tonight. But you'll get your lesson sheets, one but you're just going to get them weekly now. So you'll get a weekly lesson sheet that will lead you through the week. Because we're going to use this same material both Sunday and Wednesdays, I'm changing how I'm doing that. So I'm going to give you basically your readings, and you'll get a lesson, and then you'll have extra readings through the week as it relates to that lesson that aren't in the material that I've added. And anyway, it'll make sense as soon as you see it. But so you'll get that. So the first 3 days, so Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, we'll study on Wednesday night. Thursday, Friday, Saturdays, readings and study, we'll study on Sunday. But it's less material because it's going to allow us to then to talk about these things. I think I've been we did Isaiah with our foot to the floor and kind of zoomed through it. I've given you too much really to even talk about when we come into these classes on Sunday mornings, and so I'm trying to get it to where we've got kind of one central theme that we'll be discussing, and that'll give us time to actually talk about it and not just kind of try to cover it all in rapid fire. But for today, we're still under our old method and looking at these Proverbs. What I've done on the screen, it's the exact same thing that I handed out. It's just it'll look slightly different because I blew it up so that you can see it on the screen. But the first proverb we were talking about this week is this messaging of better is a dinner of herbs from Proverbs 15, 16, and 17. Better is a dinner of herbs where love is than a stalled ox and hatred therewith, right? Is another thought process as it relates to that. But he said, better is a little with the fear of the Lord than great treasure with trouble. Better is a dinner of herbs where love is than a fatted calf or a stalled ox with hatred. If you've ever heard me preach out of this text, you've heard me say that I give people the West Virginia translation of that text. And it says this: it's a whole heap better to eat soup, beans, and cornbread than to have steak every night of the week. It's a whole lot better to have simple things where love is than to have the best things known to man where there's hatred and strife and challenge. I thought it was kind of fitting, right? Because in the timing of it all, with the holiday season and people gathering together and that kind of pressure that often happens among people to try to do more than maybe they should and to spend more money than they really ought to be, and they're thinking about those kinds of things, and they forget that the wisdom of the Proverbs is simple is what? Simple is better sometimes, right? Simple's better. Better is a dinner of herbs, especially if your choices are have a lot, but in that scene there's also strife and challenge and hurt feelings and hatred and all of that kind of stuff. What's the point, in other words, the proverb said? What benefit has anybody gained if they have the best things the world could offer, but it's just a miserable existence or a miserable environment to be in? Wouldn't you be better off just serving soup, beans, and cornbread and have a good old time and be joyful around each other? Isn't that a better choice? And that's kind of the message of that proverb. Notice what Jeff said at the very outset. Life's bitterest irony is that the things we often seek the most vigorously are the very things we end up regretting later. And I thought there was a lot of wisdom in that too. Sometimes we pursue things with great vigor and we just put every ounce of our fiber and energy towards it, and then later we come to realize it really didn't have near the value that we should. Have you ever had great expectations and then just kind of been let down? I was going to, well, never mind. If I use an example, I'll get in trouble for it, and so I'm not going to do that. But I've always wanted to try Omaha steaks. Anybody ever had an Omaha steak? I always wanted to try it, never had. Finally, Deborah broke down and got me some for Christmas. Expectation was bigger than the reward. Expectation was bigger than the reward. Was it a good steak? Sure it was. But man, I was just, I was expecting for I couldn't think of any popular chefs. I almost said Chef Boyardee, but that wasn't going to work. But right, I was expecting just the greatest thing ever. And it was fine. right? But sometimes that's all because we what? We created such great expectations and put such vigor towards something, and then it just doesn't come out. Sometimes simple is better. It's okay to eat baked steak from Walmart. That's what I'm having today, and I'm going to love it just as much or more than that Omaha steak that we order. Now, I just ruined my ability to get coupons from Omaha via our live feed, but that'll be all right. We can figure that out later. But you understand the proverb, right? Better is a dinner of herbs where love is. Simple things sometimes. The great treasure with trouble isn't worth it. And the things that we sometimes value simply don't come out the way we'd like them to. Your thoughts that you had at the outset of this passage. Things you might have thought about. Here was a pretty sobering thought that Jeff wrote in his material. He says, he lies upon his deathbed, it matters not how much money a man made. Right? It doesn't matter. Or whether his wife was a model, or he had the great possessions, or all those temporal, superficial things that people think that are important. They just don't really amount to anything at the end of the day. And it is divine wisdom and judgment for us to be recognizing that we can put way too much faith and stock and importance on earthly things. And he gave some great examples in relationship to that. He also references some ecclesiastical thoughts. He said, the preacher even warned that such a short-sighted lifestyle would eventually come to nothing. The sleep of a laboring man is sweet, whether he eats little or much, but the abundance of the rich will not permit him to sleep. There is a severe evil which I have seen under the sun, riches kept for their owner to his hurt. He says the man who works hard is going to sleep well whether he's rich or poor, right? It's going to be irrelevant to him. His labors and the abundance of his labors is going to allow for him to have a peaceful rest, irregardless. And yet there's a lot of folks who reap the world's riches to their own hurt and harm, the Ecclesiastes writer says. People have sacrificed way too much for financial gain. They've sacrificed families. They've sacrificed marriages. They've sacrificed friendships. They've sacrificed the Lord. All in a pursuit of great riches and benefits. The Proverbs also teach us, neither give me poverty nor riches. And I think there's wisdom in that. Lord, just help me find some middle ground here where I'm not consumed with trying to gain more because I have nothing. Don't give me too much to where I become trusting in that, but find a way to help me evaluate and recognize and benefit from just the simple provisions that I need in life. We need to work harder to make our environments and the circumstances and places we find ourselves in places of joy and love and peace. And that doesn't have to cost money. We can create those environments without the need for the things and the trappings that often come along with it. Is it nice to have nice things once in a while? Sure. Is it wrong to have nice things? No. But when they become the focus, and when they are the pursuit of those things have robbed us of the love and joy that we ought to be putting into our lives, then that's when they become a problem. That's when they become a challenge. Any last thoughts about that text before we move on? Let me go to the next proverb then. Proverb 15:24. He said, the way of the wise, or the way of life winds upward for the wise. And at the beginning of that paragraph, he says, what is the meaning of life? Perhaps climb mountains in search of wise. People climb mountains in search of wise hermits and pay good money to have gypsies consult their dubious sources to learn the meaning of life. He's just trying to say people will do all kinds of things to try to find out the meaning of life. The truth is, the meaning of life is very simple. What is it, by the way? Yeah. Fear God and keep His commandments, right? Fear God and keep His commandments. It's really that simple. Now, it's simple in summary form. It's not always easy to live. It's got its challenges in terms of building. But as far as understanding the meaning and purpose, and no one should ever question their purpose in life, because though it may unfold in odd ways or interesting ways, or maybe not the way I would expect it to in its physical circumstances, the ultimate purpose of every human being is the same. Fear God and keep His commandments. Everybody's purpose is the same. Everybody's circumstances aren't the same. The way people have to manage that challenge isn't the same. I get all that. But in foundationally speaking, our lives are very simple. And so the wise man looks where? He looks upward. He's looking to God. The wise man will not be consumed with looking around himself. He'll look upward. What is its purpose? Why are we here? What am I supposed to be doing? Am I on the right track, or am I going to reach old age with a bucket of regrets and nary a drop of hope? And we become consumed with that, right? And part of that problem is if we forget God in the equation, then it only becomes about what I can accomplish on my own, and which isn't much, right? If it's all about only what I think I can accomplish myself, and we're always looking to everything but God, then we create challenges. Wisdom intervenes, except it does not appear in a crystal ball or mingled among the tea leaves. Wisdom calls aloud from the Word of God. The way of life winds upward for the wise, that he may turn away from hell below. It's a powerful proverb. Sometimes we don't even realize that our eyes are fixed downward. Sometimes we have engaged and focused on things in life and prioritized things to such an extent that we don't even realize that our eyes are looking straight downward rather than upward. And generally speaking, you walk in the direction that you're looking. You generally will walk in the direction that you're looking. In fact, there's not a one of us in here probably that couldn't give you an example of in a moment in your life where you were walking where you weren't looking and it didn't work out so well, right? All of us have had moments like that. I can't tell you how many signs I've walked into, right? Tripped over a sign that was on it because I'm not paying attention to what's going on around me. I'm looking elsewhere rather than the path that's before me. And spiritually, I think that happens too. We want to go to heaven with our eyes looking everywhere but towards heaven. We want the eternal life and the blessings and benefits, but we look anywhere and everywhere but the direction our eyes need to be looking in order to accomplish that. It's kind of hard to walk in the pathway of righteousness if our eyes aren't fixed on the pathway of righteousness. And I think that's an important aspect of this conversation from this proverb. I'll pause. Go ahead, Bob.
There's a lot of times we put the emphasis on fear God and keep His commandments as respect. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that you not to respect God and what He can do and what He can do to you. But like the verse you used in your sermon today, fear not man just kill you, but fear the one that can kill your life and your soul both. And I feel that fear God in that verse you're emphasizing here means to actually fear the Hades. Because I know you're in school, you take a test. The result is good or bad. And I think that's what this is referring to. Heaven being the good, bad being hell.
And which way am I looking? What am I focused on? What is the hope and desire that I have? And let's go back to the sermon for a minute. Do I care enough about where my soul ends up to be wise and look towards those spiritual things that should be a priority to us? Go ahead, Randy.
The Friday night, we were flipping channels and run across the lost treasures of Egypt. Of course, Jacqueline wanted to watch the people climb through tunnels. But in one of those shows, they were talking about a statue of Ramses that they were putting back up. And the first time they hung it back up, the eyes were looking down. And they're like, no, we can't do that because of where they're looking. We need the eyes up on the horizon and looking upwards. So it's not something that, it's wisdom across the board that we see in how that, I mean, even the Egyptians, yes, they're not looking to God in that sense, but they are looking to, they understand the difference between upward and downward in that sense.
And the concept is to look beyond self, right? If you're looking, the imagery is, if I'm looking upward, I'm looking beyond self, and I'm looking to something greater. And then when you add to that conversation, Jehovah God of the Bible, now the real benefit comes, because now my eyes, number one, aren't looking to self, but they're looking towards Jehovah God. But the concept is understood in many cultures, even though they may not appreciate where those eyes should be fixed upon. They know that it shouldn't be downward or to self or other things. Notice he said, this life is not about this life. This life isn't about our earthly existence. So long as it is for you, happiness, contentment, and success will prove elusive, because the standard of judgment is all wrong. When we're focused on self, all the things that we think it's going to bring often abandon us. Sorry, my eyes are, when I see it large print, it's different than my original notes. So I'm trying to find where I'm looking for. A wise person acknowledges both the evidence for the existence of God, this is kind of what Randy was talking about, in the universe, and his identification as Jehovah in the Bible. He recognizes the futility of earthly life, especially when compared to the eternality of heaven and hell. He prudently arranges his life so that priority belongs to the things that last forever. For the things which are seen are temporary, but the things which are not seen are eternal, and which is what Paul wrote in 1 Corinthians chapter 4 and verse 18. A wise man will arrange his thinking to allow himself to continually be focused on spiritual things and to not become distracted or challenged by all the earthly trappings that often come along. Sometimes I think we become convinced that in order to fix or address some physical circumstance in my life, I've got to put the spiritual on hold. Right? I got to put the spiritual on hold for a little while, because I've got these physical things of everyday life that I need to address. But the wise man will recognize that if he keeps his eyes on the spiritual, it will aid and help him resolve the earthly. And that's kind of the hard convincing that we've got to do with ourselves sometimes. That spiritual thinking isn't a detriment to the process, it's an aid to the process of answering the challenges of this life. The way of life thus winds upward for a wise person, upward toward heaven, and what Paul called the prize of the upward call of God in Christ Jesus in Philippians chapter 3 in verse 14. Paul recognized that no matter what calamity or challenge or difficulty he found himself in physically, if he would keep his eyes focused on that upward call of heaven, he could overcome it. And he faced many a challenge throughout that process. Notice this thought that Jeff shared. Sin does that. Everyone who makes a practice of sinning also practices lawlessness. Sin is lawlessness. You know that he appeared to take away sins, and in him there is no sin. No one who abides in him keeps on sinning. No one who keeps on sinning has either seen him or known him. 1 John 3, verses 4 through 6. sometimes I think we get confused about sinless perfection and the goal and purpose of avoiding sin. And sometimes if we only look at the extremes, what will happen is we'll say on one side, well, do what you want because God will forgive it anyway. So God's grace has got it covered. It really doesn't matter what you do. That's one end of the spectrum. Or maybe you'll jump over to the other side and be so convinced that my own righteousness is going to save me. And I am going to be so good and so dedicated and so faithful and just so wonderfully righteous in the eyes of the Lord that He wouldn't help but open that gate for me in eternity. We go to these, there's balance maybe somewhere in between those 2 points, where I appreciate and honor and respect the fact that mercy is what saves me. Grace is what saves me. I don't deserve any of that benefit. My sins have put me in a circumstance where I was lost and in condemnation in the eyes of God, but He deems my faith as righteousness. Appreciate that, but not to the point where it leads me to think that I can choose, behave, and act in any way that I want. A wise man will honor the gift of salvation and hope and promise and mercy by doing all that he can to live faithful and conduct themselves as God would want them to. That's the balance between those two things. That's what the wise man will do. He won't fall prey to the extremes that often happen to folks, where one is do what you want because it'll just be forgiven anyway, or be so good that you're just going to earn salvation at the end of the day. Somehow there's got to be a balance, and I think the wise man sees the difference. And he doesn't want to continue in sin because he's upward looking. He doesn't want to engage in things that God has condemned because he's looking upward. He's not looking towards those things. Wisdom that is from above draws the believer in its direction, and his joyful, hopeful life are signposts along the route. The upward look and eyes will guide me in the path that God desires. Any thoughts about that proverb before I move to the last one?
The apostle who asked God to remove the thorn in his side, thorn being the sin that he had that he's having a problem with. He didn't ask him, well, I know you're going to forgive me, because he's wanting a path where he can get rid of the sin. And, the Catholics, I don't care what I do, I can go to church and get my forgiveness each day. And I don't think this is what the apostle was referring to when he says, remove the thorn in my side. I think he's referring to God giving him the strength to fight it and his grace being sufficient to cover it.
And I think you're right. And again, it's a principle held by many a man that convinces himself that again, I can behave and choose anything I want, and it won't matter to God. But men like Paul and others have encouraged us not to think of grace in that way, but to think of grace as something that leads me to behave better and choose more wisely, and for God to open up that pathway that leads me to reconciliation and redemption. But I've got to walk through it, right? I've got to take my necessary steps in that process as well. The last Proverbs in this series, today's study, was out of Proverbs 15:27, where he simply said, "He who is greedy for gain troubles his own house." The point is, ladies and gentlemen, that greed, for lack of a better word, is good. Greed is right. Greed works. Greed clarifies, cuts through, and captures the essence of the evolutionary spirit. Greed in all of its forms, greed for life, for money, for love, knowledge, has marked the upward surge of mankind. Clearly that didn't come from where? It didn't come from the Bible, right? That didn't come from the Bible, but yet that's the mentality of folks. It actually came from a movie that Jeff quoted, but that's the way of man's thinking, right? That what's the harm in me pursuing the things that I want and what I want to receive? And if it's money or if it's all kinds of, whatever it is, what's the harm in that? And yet certainly God wants us to appreciate that there is harm in that. It doesn't work, number one, but it obscures, it impedes, it testifies to the baseness and devolution of the human mind. Greed has done nothing but to stall the upward call of God in Christ Jesus for millions of souls that became addicted to its instant gratification. Because that's really where it lies, right? Greed is about, number one, it's about me, and greed's about the immediate. And if we can become consumed with the immediate, it is going to be hard for us to stay and remain dedicated and faithful to the end. And the truth is, all of us become sometimes consumed with the immediate. What's in front of me? How can I possess what's in front of me without much thought about the eternal state or condition?
I've said this before, but I think one of the things that I see myself struggling with is, what are we going to do when we retire? How are we going to survive? So it's like right now I feel like my focus is on working so that we are okay, and we don't rely on Megan to take care of us.
Well, nobody wants that, but go ahead.
But I think that we can be consumed by, maybe it's not greed so much as, not trusting that God's going to care for us, because I see that with my parents, and, they're still being taken care of.
Yeah.
My dad.
It's an interesting balance, isn't it? Because the Bible talks about a man people working with their hands and being diligent, and lots of examples. Say it again, Kim. Yeah, to be a wise steward over the things. All of that is part of the conversation, and how to balance, right? How do I balance when I'm trying to be a good, wise steward over what God's blessing me with, and to provide not just maybe for today, but for the future, but not become so consumed with the idea that if I don't do all these things, then God's going to leave me high and dry at the end of this process. And that's the balance, right? That's the challenge. And I think maybe James has got a little bit of insight when he talks about those who are going to go and buy and sell. And he says, before you ever leave the house, say, if the Lord wills, tomorrow we will buy and sell and do these various things. I think that's maybe helpful in that process, is that be diligent, be a good steward, provide not only for self, but he talks about those, let a man work with his own hands to not only provide his own needs, but to be able to help and provide for the needs of others when those circumstances come up. But to always remember the Lord's will in the process, right? To always remember that God has a will, and prioritizing Him through that process is what maybe is important. I think where the failure might be on our part sometimes, Doris, is that we become so consumed with making sure I've got a big old nest egg sitting there at retirement that I sacrifice a lot of spiritual things in order to get there. That would be the mistake, where my focus was so intent on working in earthly things that I neglected some more spiritual, weightier matters in life in the process. But finding a balance isn't always as simple and easy as we make it out to be.
Give us our estates, the money that we have, originally, He gave it to us freely. And if we can't use it freely to help other people, like in Luke 16th chapter, where Jesus said that use your wealth to help other people to gain friends. Because when it's gone, you have a home in heaven.
And I think, right, the blessings God gives to us Be a good steward. Be wise in the way we use them, and appreciate that if they came from Him, then He wants me to put those to use and to purpose them. I think when the greed kicks in, and the challenges of that is sometimes, and sometimes it's not just time inside a home setting, because that's the text that we're looking at, but sometimes we can do silly things financially that can hurt and harm the overall benefit of that household. I think that's part of this proverb and the warning that he's giving here. Be careful how you use wisdom with the things that God has provided for us, and how sometimes we can make mistakes that are more costly than just money. Greed for gain troubles the home, whether it plays out in risky investments, absentee parents, unpaid credit card bills, or turning to crime. Lots of things can happen, and it snowball effect, right? And it's challenging. The Bible doesn't spend a lot of time on money management or financial kinds of matters in relationship to that, but it does speak to it, and it does warn us and to be cautious about how we go about using the things that God blesses us with, and to be careful that we don't create difficulties for our families and our homes in the choices that we make when it comes financially. And especially married couples need to be smart in the way they talk about those things and the choices that they make, and have those conversations where they cooperate in that. Any other thoughts you might have had as we close out this morning? So we always need to be upward looking, be careful not to be consumed with the greed of this world, and to make sure we're continually fixing our eyes on what God would want us to be focused on, so that we don't get caught up in all of these things. And again, starting next week, technically starting tomorrow, actually, your reading schedule will start tomorrow, and you'll read those things. But starting Wednesday and then next Sunday, it'll be different. I won't feel like I'm just trying to get through material. We'll slow down a little bit and have time to pursue that. But I hope you'll do that. I hope you'll read through all those texts. And no, I rewrote it. Yeah, no. The new one starts. Yeah, the new one will start on Mondays. So it'll be Monday, it'll be a little different. It'll be Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. I won't give you things on Sunday. We're here and studying and worshiping on Sunday, so the new system doesn't have anything written down for Sundays. It'll be Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday is what you'll have. Anyway, you'll see it when you see it. But do want to let you know, though, but be thinking about it. And you've got less, so come into our classes ready to discuss it and talk about it. I talk enough. You guys, you can come and I will listen to you as it relates to that. Let's have a word of prayer before we close. Our Father in heaven, thank you for the day that you've blessed us with, the opportunity to worship you today. Guide us, strengthen us, help us to keep our eyes upward, help us to be individuals who care about you, care about your word, care about your purposes for us as we go into a new year. Just give us a renewed and rededicated heart that wants to honor you every day and to care about your Son and your will and purposes for us. Lead us and guide us in all that's good, and we pray this through Christ's name. Amen.